They say every predator eventually meets a bigger predator. But what happens when three wolves corner what they think is a sheep, only to discover they've trapped a lion? Picture this. You're walking down a dark alley. You see someone ahead, smaller than you, alone, vulnerable. Your buddies are with you, 3 against 1. Easy target, right? Your blood pumps with that ancient rush of dominance, that primal certainty that you're the hunter and they're the prey. You've done this before. You know how it ends. But here's what you don't know, what you can't know just by looking. Maybe that person spent 2 decades in places where death was a breakfast companion. Maybe those hands that look so delicate have pulled triggers in 6 different war zones. Maybe that quiet demeanor isn't weakness. It's the calm of someone who's faced down entire enemy squads and lived to file the report. Every bully makes the same fatal mistake. They judge the book by its cover. They see what they want to see, an easy mark, a victim, someone who won't fight back. They never ask themselves the critical question, why isn't this person afraid? Because fear is a language, and those who've mastered violence speak it fluently. They know the difference between someone who's frozen in terror and someone who's simply waiting, calculating distances, noting exits, identifying weapons, running through scenarios with the efficiency of a computer program that's processed this situation 1,000 times before. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the loudest or the biggest. It's the one who's been trained to end threats before anyone realizes the fight has started. The one whose muscle memory can break bones while their conscious mind is still processing the situation. The one who's earned medals for acts of violence so precise and devastating that the details remain classified. So when 3 military men cornered that woman in the locker room, when they thought rank and numbers gave them power, when they reached out to take what wasn't offered, they learned a lesson that some people only learn once. Never mistake silence for submission. Never confuse solitude for vulnerability, and never, ever assume you're the apex predator in the room. Because sometimes the sheep has fangs. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the locker room at Oceanic Defense Installation. Colonel Sarah Martinez preferred the solitude of evening workouts when most personnel had departed. 24 years in military service had taught her to value these quiet moments. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed off the concrete walls. 3 figures emerged from the shadows between the equipment lockers. Staff Sergeant Blake Morrison, with his regulation haircut and cocky demeanor, gestured to his companions. Corporal Jenkins, a stocky man with aggressive eyes, and Private Walsh, barely 21 and eager to prove himself, flanked him on either sides. "Well, well," Morrison said, his voice carrying across the empty space. "Looks like someone's lost. This area's restricted after hours." Sarah had just finished changing into civilian clothes when she heard the comment. She turned slowly, her trained eyes immediately assessing the situation. At 44, her athletic build reflected years of rigorous training, including a visible scar on her left shoulder from an operation in Eastern Europe. "I outrank all 3 of you," Sarah said calmly, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "Stand down immediately." Morrison stepped closer, his intentions clear. "Ranks don't matter much when there's no one around to witness what happens, Colonel." The moment his hand reached toward her, Sarah moved with practiced efficiency. Her left hand captured his wrist in a control hold, while her right elbow struck his solar plexus with precision. Morrison doubled over, gasping for air. Before the others could react, Sarah pivoted smoothly, using Morrison's momentum to send him crashing into a row of lockers. Jenkins lunged forward with a collapsible baton, but Sarah sidestepped and executed a perfect leg sweep that sent him sprawling across the floor. Walsh backed away, hands raised. "Jesus, who the hell are you?" The locker room door opened, revealing a weathered figure in the doorway. Captain Marcus Thompson, approaching 60 with steel-gray hair and 4 decades of military bearing, stepped into the room. "Gentlemen," Thompson said, his voice carrying unmistakable authority. "You've just assaulted Colonel Sarah Martinez, Army Special Forces, recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross." He moved fully into the room. "And if I'm not mistaken, one of only 4 women to complete the most elite counter-terrorism training program in our military." Walsh's face went pale. Morrison, still struggling to breathe properly, looked up in shock. Jenkins remained motionless on the floor. Sarah retrieved her jacket with methodical precision. "Captain Thompson," she acknowledged with a nod. "I had the situation under control." "I don't doubt that, Colonel," Thompson replied, his weathered face showing a hint of respect. "But regulations require proper documentation of assaults on federal property." Sarah secured her belongings and stepped away from the lockers. "These 3 need medical attention, then detention." Thompson was already reaching for his radio to summon military police. As he made the call, his eyes lingered on the scar visible through Sarah's shirt collar. "Afghanistan," he asked quietly. "Syria, 2018, she confirmed. "Extraction operation that went sideways." Thompson nodded with understanding. Few people would recognize that particular type of scar, the distinctive pattern left by shrapnel from an improvised explosive device. Even fewer would know about the classified operation that earned Sarah her Distinguished Service Cross. The extraction had involved a captured intelligence operative behind enemy lines. Command had deemed the mission too high risk, projecting unacceptable casualties. The operation was officially scrubbed, except Sarah had gone anyway, alone. She had infiltrated the compound, extracted the operative, and engaged 15 hostiles during the escape. She carried the wounded operative 4 miles through hostile territory with shrapnel lodged near her subclavian artery. The official citation mentioned only extraordinary heroism in combat operations. The details remained classified. When the military police arrived, Sarah provided concise instructions. "Get these 3 to medical, then secure them in detention. I want blood alcohol tests run immediately." As they escorted the men out, Thompson remained behind, his expression thoughtful. "Not exactly the welcome I'd arranged for your first day here, Colonel." Sarah's lips curved slightly. "Not my first hostile reception, Captain. Won't be my last." "I served with your father," Thompson said suddenly. "Operation Desert Storm, Kuwait, 1991. Sarah's attention sharpened. "You knew General Martinez?" "Roberto was one of the finest officers I ever served with," Thompson replied. "A damn good soldier and a better man." Thompson checked his watch, an old military timepiece that had survived decades of service. "The installation commander will want to see you tomorrow morning. This incident will accelerate matters considerably." "What matters?" Thompson's expression became guarded. "Not my place to say, Colonel. But nothing at Oceanic happens by coincidence these days." He straightened to attention. 0700 hours building Delta, Colonel. I'll escort you personally." As Thompson turned to leave, Sarah called after him. "Captain, what brings you here at this hour anyway?" The older man paused in the doorway. "Old habits, Colonel. Some of us don't sleep easy after what we've witnessed." With that, he disappeared into the corridor, his footsteps fading into the night. Morning arrived with the distinctive grey light of the Pacific coast. Sarah's uniform was immaculate, every crease sharp, every insignia positioned with precision. The Special Forces tab and airborne wings on her chest drew immediate attention, exactly as intended. A knock at her door came at exactly 6:55. Captain Thompson, punctual as expected. "Colonel," he greeted her, his eyes quickly assessing her appearance with professional efficiency. "Captain," she returned, "you're 5 minutes early." "Old habit from the Cold War," Thompson replied with a slight smile. "The Soviets like to catch us off guard. I learned to adjust accordingly." They walked across the installation in companionable silence, drawing occasional glances from personnel they passed. Word traveled quickly on military bases. By now, most people would know about the previous evening's incident. Commander Elizabeth Foster's office occupied the corner of Building Delta's second floor. Her aide, a young lieutenant with a carefully neutral expression, looked up as they approached. "Colonel Martinez and Captain Thompson to see Commander Foster," Thompson announced. "She's expecting you, sir," along with her other guest. Thompson's eyebrow raised slightly. "Other guest? Major Williams from the Pentagon, sir. Arrived last night." Inside, Commander Foster stood as they entered, a tall woman in her early 50s with short blonde hair. Seated in a visitor chair was Major Patricia Williams, identifiable by her Air Force uniform and intelligence insignia. "Colonel Martinez," Foster greeted, extending her hand. "Welcome to Oceanic Defense Installation. Though I understand your welcome last night was less than pleasant." Sarah shook her hand firmly. "I've experienced worse receptions, Commander." Foster gestured to chairs. "Please, sit. I believe you know Captain Thompson. This is Major Williams, Pentagon Liaison for Special Operations Security." Williams nodded, but didn't offer her hand. "Colonel Martinez, your reputation precedes you." "As does yours, Major," Sarah replied, though she knew nothing about the woman. Sometimes calculated bluffs revealed more than direct questions. A flicker of something crossed Williams's face before her professional mask returned. Foster settled behind her desk, hands folded atop a classified folder. "I'll be direct. Last night's incident has accelerated our timeline, but it doesn't change the fundamental mission." "Which is?" Sarah asked. Foster glanced at Williams, who gave a slight nod. "Operation Integrity Check," Foster said, lowering her voice. "A systematic investigation into a pattern of misconduct, harassment, and potential security breaches within certain military facilities. Oceanic is one of 6 installations currently under scrutiny." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "My role." Williams leaned forward. "You're uniquely qualified, Colonel. Female officer with extensive combat experience and unimpeachable credentials. Distinguished Service Cross recipient, Special Forces qualification. You represent everything certain regressive elements in our ranks resent and fear." "You're bait," Thompson said bluntly. Williams shot him an irritated glance. "I'd phrase it differently, Captain." "But he's not wrong," Sarah observed. "Last night wasn't random. Those 3 were sent to test me." Foster nodded slowly. "We believe so, though they likely expected a different outcome." Williams continued, opening her own folder. "We've been tracking a pattern. Harassment complaints buried, transfer requests denied, training accidents involving female personnel who filed complaints. It's systematic and escalating." Sarah processed this information. "And you believe it's organized, not isolated incidents?" "We know it is," Foster confirmed. "The question is how extensive the network is and how high it reaches in the command structure." Thompson shifted in his chair. "Permission to speak freely, Commander." Foster nodded. "Always, Marcus. Why wasn't I briefed on this operation before Colonel Martinez's arrival? As security chief, I should have been informed." Williams's expression tightened. "Operational security, Captain. The fewer people who knew Colonel Martinez's true purpose, the more authentic the reaction would be." "And the more danger she was in," Thompson countered, an edge entering his voice. "I can handle myself, Captain," Sarah interjected calmly. Foster raised a hand to forestall further argument. "What's done is done. Captain Thompson, you're being briefed now because we need your expertise and knowledge of this installation." "What's my official cover?" Sarah asked. "No cover," Williams replied. "You're here openly as part of a security assessment team. Your Special Forces background gives you authority to evaluate protocols, security measures, and personnel readiness. Access to every part of this installation without raising suspicion." Foster slid the classified folder across her desk. Your real objective is to identify the leadership of what we're calling the Oceanic Network, document their activities, build a case solid enough for court-martial proceedings. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the assembled evidence. The pattern was unmistakable once compiled. Women filing harassment complaints, suddenly receiving negative performance reviews. Accusers transferred to undesirable assignments or pressured to resign. 4 suspicious accidents resulting in serious injuries, all involving female personnel who had reported harassment. "How long has this been active?" she asked, studying a timeline stretching back nearly 6 years. "That we can document 5 years," Williams answered, "but Captain Thompson believes it started earlier." Sarah looked at Thompson, whose face had gone carefully neutral. Thompson met her gaze steadily. 6 years and 2 months ago, my daughter, Lieutenant Jennifer Thompson, was stationed here as an intelligence analyst. She reported harassment by her supervisor. 4 weeks later, she was found in her quarters, apparent suicide. The office fell silent. Sarah understood the weight of Thompson's words, not just the tragedy they conveyed, but the personal motivation they revealed. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Thompson acknowledged her words with a slight nod. Jennifer was never one to give up. She was a fighter, like you. His eyes held Sarah's. Her case was ruled suicide. Investigation closed within 48 hours. No evidence preserved, no thorough inquiry conducted. "And you believe it was connected to her harassment report," Sarah concluded. "I know it was," Thompson replied, certainty in his voice, "but I couldn't prove it then." Foster cleared her throat gently. "Marcus has been collecting information unofficially since then. His observations form the foundation of our current investigation." A photograph slipped from between files. A young woman in military uniform, her resemblance to Thompson unmistakable in her facial features and bearing. Lieutenant Jennifer Thompson's official service portrait. Sarah handled the photo carefully. "Your only child?" Thompson confirmed with a nod. "She was." Sarah returned the photo and closed the folder. "I'll need access to all female personnel files for the past 6 years. Security footage, medical reports, and I'll need to interview current female personnel privately and securely." Williams nodded. "You'll have whatever you need. Captain Thompson will serve as your liaison and security backup." "With respect, Major," Sarah said, "if Captain Thompson's daughter was a victim, his involvement could compromise the investigation legally. Defense counsel would claim bias." Foster interrupted. "We've considered that, Colonel. Captain Thompson won't be involved in evidence collection or interviews, but his knowledge of this installation and its personnel is invaluable. And frankly, you'll need someone watching your back." Sarah considered the arrangement. Thompson's personal connection was both liability and asset. "Understood," she finally said. "When do we start?" "You already have," Foster replied, gesturing toward the window where the detention facility was visible. "Those 3 from last night are surface-level players. We need to know who sent them, who they report to, and how extensive this network really is." Williams stood, signaling the meeting's end. "One final point, Colonel. This investigation has been authorized at the highest levels, but that doesn't mean everyone in the command structure supports it. Trust carefully." Sarah rose as well, tucking the classified folder under her arm. "In my experience, Major, trust is earned." The female enlisted quarters at Oceanic stood separate from the main housing complex, a modern 4-story structure built in the early 2000s. Sarah noted the security cameras covering the main entrance, standard models with predictable blind spots. The side entrance had no camera coverage whatsoever. "When were these security systems last upgraded?" she asked Thompson. 2015, he replied. "Budget constraints have delayed scheduled improvements twice." Sarah made mental notes. Inadequate security systems created opportunities for harassment and for her investigation. They inspected the security control room, finding equipment that was functional but outdated. The monitoring officer, a young corporal, confirmed that all access controls ran through Captain Thompson's office, but actual data management was handled by the Information Systems Department under Chief Warrant Officer Davis. "The system has vulnerabilities," Sarah stated after they left the control room. Thompson nodded. "I've submitted upgrade requests 7 times in 4 years, always denied for budgetary reasons, or intentionally delayed," Sarah suggested. "That's my assessment as well." They continued their tour to the dining facility, where Thompson pointed out a young woman sitting alone at a corner table. "Sergeant Lisa Chen," he said quietly. "One of the few who filed a complaint and remained on the installation." "Her complaint?" Sarah asked. "Inappropriate conduct by Major Harrison, Operations Department head." Thompson nodded toward a table of officers. "Third from the left, dark hair, glasses." Sarah observed the man without appearing to focus on him. Mid-40s, average build with an arrogant expression. As she watched, Harrison looked toward Chen, his gaze lingering uncomfortably before he turned back to his colleagues with a smirk. "Status of her complaint?" "Insufficient evidence," Thompson replied, the quotation marks evident in his tone. Harrison claimed she misinterpreted professional guidance as inappropriate behavior. Case dismissed 4 months ago. They were joined by Dr. Amanda Richardson, the installation's chief medical officer. After introductions, Richardson spoke candidly about treating the 3 men from the previous evening's incident. "All 3 will make full recoveries, unfortunately," she noted with dry precision. When Sarah asked about medical record security, Richardson revealed concerning information. "I've discovered evidence of unauthorized access at least 8 times in the past 18 months. Patient files accessed or modified during off hours when no medical personnel were on duty." "You reported this?" Richardson nodded. 4 times? Each time I was told it was either a system glitch or scheduled maintenance." "Which patients' files were accessed?" Sarah asked. "Female personnel who had reported harassment or requested transfers," Richardson confirmed, "including Jennifer Thompson." Thompson's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible reaction to hearing his daughter's name. Richardson turned to him with compassion. "I never believed the official finding, Marcus. You know that." After lunch, Sarah approached Sergeant Chen, who initially responded with extreme caution and wariness. "With respect, Colonel, what happened is on record. The investigation concluded. Pursuing it further would only damage my career more than it already has." Sarah changed her approach. "I'm not here about the investigation, Sergeant. I'm interested in overall security posture and operational readiness. Your perspective is valuable context." Chen remained skeptical. "Ma'am, the last officer who said they wanted my input shared everything with Major Harrison. My performance evaluations have declined significantly since then." Sarah met her gaze directly. "Sergeant, I'm not here to make your life more difficult." Quite the opposite. After arranging a formal meeting with Chen, Sarah continued her installation tour. Near the communications center, she observed Harrison in conversation with 2 other officers. As she watched, Harrison handed something to one of the men, a small package that quickly disappeared into a pocket. Sarah approached them directly. The conversation stopped as she neared, faces composing into professional masks. "Gentlemen," she greeted them, "Colonel Martinez, Security Assessment Team." Harrison recovered first, extending his hand. "Major Robert Harrison, Operations, welcome to Oceanic." Sarah shook his hand briefly, noting the excessive pressure he applied, a small dominance display. "Thank you. I'm conducting a preliminary survey of facilities." Perhaps you could direct me toward the communication center. Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, though I believe Captain Thompson is your designated guide. The captain is otherwise engaged, Sarah replied smoothly. I thought I'd continue familiarizing myself with the installation layout. Ambitious, Harrison commented. Oceanic can be complicated to navigate for newcomers. The veiled warning wasn't subtle. Sarah met it with a level gaze. Fortunately, I have extensive experience with complex environments. As she walked away, Sarah's secure phone vibrated with a message from Thompson. Meeting cancelled. Report to Foster's office immediately. When she arrived, the atmosphere had changed dramatically from the morning's meeting. Foster stood behind her desk, expression grave. Williams sat rigidly in a visitor chair. On Foster's desk lay a photograph, an official military portrait of a young female officer. Colonel, Foster said without preamble, I believe you met Lieutenant Maria Santos during your tour this morning? Sarah searched her memory. No, Commander, I don't believe so. Foster's frown deepened. That's because Lieutenant Santos didn't report for duty today, or last night. She's been missing for approximately 36 hours. Sarah absorbed this information, its significance immediately apparent given the context of her investigation. Her assignment? Sarah asked. Intelligence analysis, Williams supplied. She was conducting internal reviews of classified communication protocols. Similar to Jennifer Thompson's role, Sarah noted, glancing at the empty chair where Thompson would normally sit. Where's Captain Thompson? Foster and Williams exchanged looks. Organizing a search of the installation, Foster finally said. Lieutenant Santos's disappearance has affected him, given the similarities to his daughter's case. Williams added, sliding a folder across the desk. Santos filed a complaint 2 weeks ago. Harassment by a superior officer. The complaint was still under initial review. Sarah opened the folder. The subject of the complaint was Major Robert Harrison. The same Harrison with a history involving Sergeant Chen, Sarah observed. Foster nodded grimly. Correct. Sarah studied Santos's photograph, a confident young woman with determined eyes and professional bearing. The parallels to Jennifer Thompson's case were becoming difficult to ignore. I need to accelerate this investigation, she stated firmly. No more gradual approach. Santos could be in danger if she isn't already. Agreed, Foster said. What do you need? Full access to Harrison's office, quarters, and communications. I need Chen brought in for questioning immediately, and I need Thompson back here, his emotional involvement notwithstanding. As Sarah turned to leave, her eye caught a photograph on the wall behind Foster's desk. A group shot of senior officers at what appeared to be a change of command ceremony. In the back row stood General Bradley, a 2-star general she'd served under briefly in Syria. Commander, when was this taken? She asked, gesturing to the photograph. Foster glanced back. 18 months ago, my predecessor's retirement ceremony. General Bradley attended. Yes, he and Captain Thompson served together years ago. Special operations in Central America, I believe. This new connection sent Sarah's mind racing. Thompson had never mentioned serving with Bradley. Yet there he was in the photograph, standing near Thompson, both men looking less comfortable than the occasion warranted. Sarah made a split-second decision to keep her observation to herself until she could speak with Thompson privately. Just noting familiar faces, she said. Outside, Sarah spotted Thompson returning from the harbor area, his expression grim. Captain, she called, moving to intercept him. Thompson altered course to meet her. Colonel, you've been briefed on Santos. Yes? No sign of her? Thompson shook his head. Nothing conclusive. Her quarters are undisturbed. No personal items missing that her roommate could identify. Sarah studied him, weighing how to approach her discovery. You never mentioned you served with General Bradley. Thompson's expression changed subtly, a momentary flash of something like concern before his professional mask returned. It wasn't relevant to your investigation. I believe it might be, Sarah countered. Bradley was my commanding officer in Syria. Now I find he has connections to Oceanic and to you personally. Thompson glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. This isn't the place for that discussion, Colonel. Then where is... Thompson checked his watch. My quarters, 2100 hours. After evening formation, when we're less likely to be observed. The afternoon stretched into evening as Sarah methodically pieced together the increasingly complex puzzle of Oceanic defense installation. Her interview with Sergeant Chen confirmed her suspicions. Harrison's harassment wasn't isolated behavior, but part of a systematic pattern. Chen revealed that at least 5 other women in operations had experienced similar treatment, but most had either transferred or resigned rather than file formal complaints. More troubling was Chen's revelation that Lieutenant Santos had approached her 10 days earlier, asking detailed questions about communications protocols and security measures. Santos had been particularly interested in unauthorized access to classified systems, the same issue that had reportedly concerned Jennifer Thompson before her death. At 2100 hours, Sarah made her way discreetly to Thompson's quarters, taking an indirect route and avoiding security cameras. Thompson's living space was spartanly furnished, but meticulously organized, military precision evident throughout. A single photo of Jennifer Thompson in her dress uniform was positioned prominently on his desk. "You wanted to discuss General Bradley," Thompson began without preamble. "Yes," Sarah confirmed. "Your connection to him wasn't mentioned in any briefing materials. Bradley and I served together in Joint Special Operations Command. Honduras, 1994. Classified counter-narcotics mission that went badly. Beyond that, our paths crossed occasionally over the years." His presence at Oceanic 18 months ago? Thompson's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Official capacity, the change of command ceremony included joint service components due to Oceanic's role in certain classified operations. Sarah studied him carefully. "Captain, with respect, you're being evasive. I need complete information if this investigation is going to succeed." For a long moment, Thompson remained silent. Finally, he sighed, a rare display of emotion from the stoic officer. "Colonel, what I'm about to tell you isn't in any official record. It could compromise not just this investigation, but potentially critical national security operations." Sarah maintained eye contact. "I understand the implications, Captain." Thompson retrieved a small digital storage device hidden inside a hollowed-out technical manual. "My insurance policy," he explained, inserting the device into a secure tablet. "Jennifer's real work wasn't standard intelligence analysis. She was part of a specialized unit monitoring potential security breaches within our own military, specifically unauthorized access to weapons control systems. The tablet displayed heavily encrypted files." Thompson entered a complex passcode, revealing documents bearing the highest classification markings. "Operation Safeguard wasn't just about foreign intelligence gathering," Thompson continued. "That was the cover. The real mission was internal counterintelligence, identifying potential compromise of strategic weapon systems and protocols." Sarah processed this revelation, its significance immediately apparent. Access to strategic weapon systems was among the most tightly controlled information in the military. "Jennifer discovered something," Sarah surmised. Thompson nodded grimly. 2 weeks before her death, she identified anomalous access patterns in the verification protocols. Someone using general-level credentials during times when those generals were verifiably elsewhere. She reported it through proper channels? To Bradley, yes. As JSOC commander, he was the designated recipient for that category of intelligence. Sarah connected the pieces. And then she died. Thompson's composure slipped momentarily, pain flashing across his features before military discipline reasserted control. Suicide was the official finding, but Jennifer knew something was wrong with those access logs. She told me as much the week before her death. Not the classified details, but enough that I knew she was concerned about a security breach at high levels. And Santos follows the same pattern. Thompson nodded. Lieutenant Santos was conducting an internal security audit of communication systems, including the same strategic weapons protocols Jennifer was monitoring. 4 days ago, she requested a private meeting with me, said she'd found something concerning. We were scheduled to meet yesterday morning. She never made it, Sarah concluded. Correct. Sarah studied the documents on Thompson's tablet. These alone aren't proof of anything conclusive. No, Thompson agreed. They're fragments. Jennifer was careful not to keep complete records outside secure facilities. This was just enough to help me piece together what she was working on. Why didn't you take this to Foster or Williams? Thompson's expression hardened. Because I don't know how high this goes. Foster is competent, but her clearance doesn't cover these systems. Williams. He hesitated. Williams' connections to intelligence agencies make her both valuable and suspect. And now? Sarah asked. With Santos missing? Now I believe we're running out of time, Thompson replied. Someone is eliminating witnesses. First Jennifer, now possibly Santos. Anyone who gets too close to whatever they're hiding. Sarah considered their options. The investigation had expanded far beyond harassment into potential espionage and threats to national security. Yet they still lacked definitive proof, just patterns and suspicious timing. We need access to the complete records, she decided. The actual strategic weapons access logs Jennifer was monitoring. Thompson shook his head. Those are compartmentalized beyond even your clearance level, Colonel. Stored in secure facilities with biometric access controls. But not beyond Bradley's access, Sarah noted, or whoever is using general-level credentials. Correct. Sarah stood pacing the small room. The harassment cases, the network, they could be cover for something bigger. Or a symptom of the same corruption, Thompson said. That's my assessment. A culture of intimidation ensures silence. Anyone who might notice irregularities in security protocols is either driven out or neutralized before they can report it. Sarah stopped by the window, looking out at the darkened installation. Tomorrow, I want access to the security archives, all footage related to Jennifer's last days and Santos's disappearance. Most of it will have been erased or corrupted, Thompson warned. Even selective erasure creates patterns, Sarah countered. What's missing can tell us as much as what remains. Thompson nodded, acknowledging the strategy. I can get you access, but we'll need to move carefully. If Santos's disappearance is connected to what she discovered, whoever is responsible will be watching for signs of investigation. Let them watch, Sarah said, turning back to face him. In fact, I'm counting on it. Thompson raised an eyebrow. You want to draw them out? Controlled exposure, Sarah clarified. Show enough interest in the security systems to create concern, but not enough to reveal our actual focus. Force them to respond, and in doing so, potentially reveal themselves. A glimmer of approval showed in Thompson's eyes. Classic counterintelligence approach. Create pressure and watch for reactions. Exactly. Starting with Harrison. His connection to both Chen and Santos makes him our most visible target. Thompson studied her with newfound respect. You're using yourself as bait. I'm a more difficult target than Jennifer or Santos, Sarah said matter-of-factly, and unlike them, I know I'm being hunted. Thompson nodded slowly, understanding the tactical approach. 0700 tomorrow. Security archives. I'll arrange access." As Sarah prepared to leave, Thompson called after her, "Colonel, be careful. These people have already killed once, possibly twice." Sarah nodded. "I always am, Captain." The seriousness in her eyes conveyed what remained unspoken. She understood the stakes. This wasn't just about justice for Jennifer Thompson or finding Maria Santos. It was about uncovering a potential breach in the nation's most sensitive security systems, a threat that went beyond personal vendettas or workplace harassment to the very heart of national security. As Sarah slipped out into the night, retracing her careful path back to her quarters, she processed everything Thompson had shared. The stakes had risen dramatically from addressing harassment to potentially uncovering a breach in strategic weapons systems. The connection to her own past was equally troubling. Bradley had been her commanding officer during the operation that earned her the Distinguished Service Cross. If he was involved in whatever conspiracy Thompson suspected, it would cast her entire career in a troubling new light. Tomorrow she would begin the delicate process of excavating secrets while ensuring she didn't become the next victim. It would require all her training, experience, and instincts, qualities that had kept her alive through dozens of high-risk operations around the world. This mission was different only in setting, not in fundamental nature. The enemy was hidden, the threat real, and the stakes life or death. For Sarah Martinez, it was familiar territory, just another battlefield with different uniforms and rules of engagement. Dawn broke over Oceanic Defense Installation with the muted colors of early spring. Sarah stood at her window, watching the installation come to life with its methodical military routine, creating an illusion of order that masked the corruption beneath. At precisely 700, Thompson knocked on her door, his expression grim. "Archives are ready. Limited window. Regular security staff returns at 0900. They moved across the installation with deliberate casualness to an unmarked door in the basement of Building Echo. The archive room was smaller than Sarah had expected, a reinforced space filled with server racks and a single workstation. 6 years of footage stored on a rotating basis, Thompson explained. Anything flagged for security review is archived separately. Sarah started with the day of Jennifer Thompson's death. When she attempted to access footage from the female officer's quarters, the system returned an error. File corrupted, data unrecoverable. "All of it?" she asked. Thompson nodded grimly. "Every camera covering Jennifer's movements that day. Convenient system failure." Sarah shifted tactics. "Show me the access logs. Who viewed or modified these files before they were corrupted?" This approach proved more productive. The system maintained logs of administrative access, showing multiple file access events in the 48 hours following Jennifer's death, all under the login credentials of then Security Chief Commander Paul Davis. "Davis," Thompson explained, "retired 3 weeks after Jennifer's death. Full pension, immediate civilian contractor position with Titan Defense Systems, tripled his salary overnight. And Santos?" Sarah pulled up logs for Santos's disappearance. Similar pattern, multiple cameras experiencing unexpected data corruption during timeframes that would have shown Santos's movements. Different administrator login, though. "User ID RH Harrison 8834, Sarah observed. "Major Harrison," Thompson confirmed. "He doesn't have official authorization for security footage access, but as operations head, he oversees network infrastructure." Sarah continued analyzing access logs spanning 6 years. A pattern emerged: selective corruption of security footage coinciding with harassment complaints, transfer requests, and training accidents involving female personnel. "They're careless," Sarah observed, "confident enough that they didn't bother covering their digital tracks." "Why would they?" Thompson replied. "Until now, no one was looking." Sarah downloaded the logs to an encrypted drive. "We need to interview everyone who had contact with Santos before she disappeared. starting with her roommate and colleagues. Thompson checked his watch. We have 20 minutes left here. Then you have a scheduled tour of the communications center at 0930. Harrison will be expecting you. Good. I want him watching me. Thompson frowned slightly. Colonel, I understand the strategy of drawing him out, but underestimating Harrison would be a mistake. He's been operating this system for years without detection. I'm not underestimating him, Captain. I'm counting on his arrogance. Men like Harrison believe they're untouchable. They mistake institutional protection for invulnerability. As the planning continued through the afternoon and evening, Sarah reviewed everything they had discovered. The pattern was clear, but the evidence remained circumstantial. They needed something more concrete to build a case that would hold up in court-martial proceedings. The communications center tour proceeded as expected. Harrison was waiting with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes, leading her through the main operations room where several technicians worked at various stations. Sergeant Chen was among them, her head deliberately down, focusing intently on her monitor. As Harrison continued his rehearsed presentation, Sarah casually moved toward Chen's workstation. The young woman tensed visibly as Sarah approached. "And what's your function here, Sergeant?" Sarah asked. Before Chen could respond, Harrison smoothly interjected, positioning himself between Sarah and the workstation. "Sergeant Chen handles routine communications traffic, nothing particularly relevant to your assessment, Colonel." The intervention was telling. Harrison didn't want Sarah speaking directly with Chen. At the end of the tour, Sarah shifted tactics in Harrison's office. "I understand Lieutenant Santos was conducting a security audit before her disappearance." Harrison's expression flickered briefly before he replied. "Yes, a routine protocol review, nothing particularly significant. Yet she's now missing," Sarah observed. "Interesting coincidence." Harrison leaned back against his desk. "Oceanic is a stressful assignment, Colonel. Not everyone handles the pressure well. Santos had been showing signs of instability recently." "Had she?" Sarah kept her tone neutral. "Her performance reviews indicated otherwise. Excellent marks across all categories." Harrison shrugged. "Performance metrics don't always capture psychological well-being. Santos had become paranoid in recent weeks, seeing threats where none existed." "Threats regarding what specifically?" "She never shared details," Harrison replied. "Just vague concerns about security protocols being compromised." Sarah changed tactics again. "I understand you've had complaints filed against you, sexual harassment allegations." The direct approach caught Harrison off guard. His facade cracked momentarily, surprise and anger flashing across his features. "Misunderstandings," he said tightly. "Young female personnel sometimes misinterpret professional mentorship as something inappropriate. All allegations were investigated and dismissed." 2 complaints in 3 years, Sarah noted. "That's quite a pattern of misunderstanding." Harrison's eyes hardened. "With respect, Colonel, personnel matters aren't part of a security assessment." "On the contrary," Sarah countered, "command climate directly impacts operational security. Harassment, intimidation, and retaliation create a dysfunctional environment that compromises mission effectiveness." Harrison's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I agree completely, which is why Oceanic takes any legitimate complaint seriously." As Sarah prepared to leave, Harrison added casually, "I understand you had an unfortunate incident your first night here, Colonel. 3 personnel who behaved inappropriately. Disgraceful." "Yes," Sarah replied evenly, "though unfortunate for them rather than me, as it turned out." Her next stop was the medical center, where Dr. Richardson was waiting with the blinds drawn. "I've pulled the medical files you requested," Richardson said without preamble. "All female personnel who filed harassment complaints in the past 6 years, plus those who requested transfers citing personal reasons." What patterns have you observed? Richardson's expression turned grim. 15 cases of reported anxiety and depression among female personnel who filed complaints. 7 cases of physical injuries consistent with assault reported as training accidents. And 2 suicide attempts, including Jennifer Thompson. Attempts, Sarah repeated. You don't believe Jennifer's death was suicide? Richardson met her gaze directly. The trajectory was unusual for a self-inflicted wound. And there were defensive injuries on her arms that weren't included in the official report. And Santos? Any medical records of concern? She came to me 2 weeks ago, Richardson confirmed. Stress symptoms, insomnia. Said she was working on a project that was keeping her awake. When I asked for details, she said it was classified but involved serious security concerns. Did she mention specifics? Names, systems, protocols? Richardson shook her head. No, but she did ask an unusual question. Whether I had access to General Crawford's medical records from his last physical examination. Sarah filed this information away. General Crawford was Chief of Defense Operations, one of the highest-ranking officers in the military with access to all classified systems, including strategic weapons protocols. As Sarah left the medical center, her secure phone vibrated with a message from Thompson. Martinez unavailable. Reassigned to Peterson Air Force Base this morning, emergency transfer. The timing was suspicious. The security technician Sarah wanted to interview had suddenly been transferred less than 24 hours after she'd visited the security center. At 1100 hours, Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez arrived at her office precisely on time, his bearing military perfect. I understand you want to discuss Lieutenant Santos, he began. Yes. You were her direct supervisor. Rodriguez nodded once sharply. For 16 months, outstanding officer, brilliant analyst. You approved her security audit despite Major Harrison's objection. Rodriguez hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Harrison believed the audit was unnecessary duplication. I disagreed. Santos had identified potential vulnerabilities that warranted investigation. What kind of vulnerabilities? Anomalous access patterns in certain classified systems, potential credential compromise. Similar to what Lieutenant Thompson identified 6 years ago, Sarah suggested. Rodriguez's eyes widened fractionally. I wasn't aware of Lieutenant Thompson's work in that area. But you were stationed here when she died, Rodriguez confirmed carefully. Suicide officially, yes. Though I didn't know her personally. Sarah studied him, noting the tension in his posture. Rodriguez was hiding something, not necessarily involvement, but knowledge he was reluctant to share. Outside, walking along the installation perimeter where surveillance was minimal, Rodriguez finally spoke more freely. Santos came to me 3 weeks ago with evidence of unauthorized access to strategic defense communication protocols. The systems that transmit and verify strategic weapons launch authentication codes. Sarah maintained her measured pace. Continue. Someone with general-level credentials had been accessing the verification subsystems, not the codes themselves, but the protocols that confirm their authenticity. Santos traced the access points to terminals here at Oceanic, but at times when the authorized users were verifiably elsewhere. The same pattern Jennifer Thompson identified 6 years ago, Sarah noted. Rodriguez nodded grimly. I didn't make the connection until Santos mentioned Thompson's name. She'd found references to Thompson's earlier investigation in archived security logs. That's when she requested the expanded audit, which Harrison opposed. Vehemently, Rodriguez confirmed, said it was a waste of resources, duplication of existing security measures. And now she's missing, Sarah observed. I don't believe in coincidences, Rodriguez replied. Not in my line of work. As they completed their circuit, Rodriguez left her with a cryptic suggestion. Colonel, You might want to review General Crawford's travel schedule for the past 8 months, particularly dates when he was supposedly at Oceanic for facility inspections. Sarah's secure phone vibrated again. Another message from Thompson. Chen missing. Didn't report for duty this morning. Quarters empty. Sarah's blood ran cold. Another witness gone. This time someone she'd been seen speaking with directly. The pattern was accelerating. Sarah's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Foster requesting her immediate presence. When she arrived at Building Delta, she found Foster's outer office empty and voices carrying through the closed door. Inside, tension was visible in both officers' postures. Documents were spread across Foster's desk, and a secure video link displayed a military intelligence seal. "Colonel Martinez," Foster greeted her, expression grave. "Situation has escalated. 2 personnel missing in less than 48 hours. Williams turned from the monitor. Santos and Chen, plus evidence of document sanitization in both their workspaces. Someone is cleaning house." Sarah glanced at the monitor. "Who's on the link?" "Admiral Mitchell, Naval Intelligence," Foster explained. "We were just briefing him on the situation." Williams gestured to the documentation. "These arrived an hour ago via secure courier. Santos's personal effects recovered from a storage facility at March Air Reserve Base." "March? That's over 70 miles from here," Sarah observed. "Any surveillance footage of who rented the facility?" "Paid in cash under a false identity," Foster replied. "Security cameras conveniently malfunctioning." "And Chen?" "No trace," Williams supplied. "Quarters empty. Personal items gone. Security footage shows her entering the enlisted quarters at 2100 hours last night. No footage of her leaving." "Which means someone disabled the cameras," Sarah concluded. Sarah processed this information, connecting it to what she'd learned from Rodriguez. "Commander, I believe these disappearances are connected to more than harassment and intimidation. Lieutenant Santos was investigating potential compromise of strategic defense communication protocols, specifically the strategic weapons launch authentication systems." Williams's expression sharpened. "That's beyond her clearance level." "Not if she was specifically tasked with security audits of those systems," Sarah countered, "which she was by Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, despite Harrison's objection." Foster frowned. "Rodriguez didn't include that detail in his report to me. Because he submitted it under classified channels, eyes only to you and defense intelligence, not including Major Williams." Williams' posture stiffened. "That's a breach of operational protocol. This investigation falls under my authority." "Unless Rodriguez had reason to believe the investigation itself might be compromised," Sarah suggested. Foster raised a hand. "Let's focus on finding our missing personnel first. Jurisdictional disputes can wait." He turned to Sarah. "Colonel, what's your assessment? Are Santos and Chen still alive?" "Santos possibly, Chen less likely. Santos has potential value as an intelligence source. She knew something specific about the security protocols. Chen was a witness to harassment patterns, but likely didn't have access to the classified systems Santos was investigating." Williams turned back to the monitor, unmuting the connection. "Admiral, we need to expand search parameters to include all military and civilian facilities within a 100-mile radius." The Admiral on screen, Mitchell, a stern-faced man in his 60s, nodded grimly. "Already underway. Defense intelligence has been activated, working under communications blackout. We're treating this as potential espionage, not just missing persons." "Admiral," Sarah addressed him directly, "has anyone verified General Crawford's physical whereabouts during the past 8 months? Specifically dates when he was supposedly at Oceanic for inspections?" Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "On what grounds are you asking, Colonel?" "Intelligence from Lieutenant Santos via Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, sir." Santos was tracking anomalous system access under General Crawford's credentials during periods when he was officially on site, but physically may have been elsewhere. Mitchell was silent for a long moment. "Colonel Martinez, I'm granting you Tango clearance effective immediately. Special access, compartmented intelligence. Commander Foster, Major Williams, step out of the room." Alone with the Admiral, Sarah stood at attention, waiting. "At ease, Colonel," Mitchell said, his tone shifting from formal to urgent. "Crawford's credentials were compromised 4 months ago. We've been running a controlled monitoring operation, tracking access patterns without alerting the unauthorized users." "Santos stumbled onto your operation," Sarah surmised. "Yes, but she went further than our sanctioned investigation, identifying specific terminals and potential suspects. That made her a liability to someone." "The same someone who killed Jennifer Thompson 6 years ago," Sarah suggested. Mitchell's expression revealed nothing. "Lieutenant Thompson's death was ruled suicide, Colonel." "With respect, Admiral, we both know that's not accurate." A long silence followed. "You have Thompson's evidence," he finally said. "Some of it," Sarah confirmed. "Enough to establish pattern and methodology, if not specific perpetrators." Mitchell nodded once sharply. "Keep it secure." "The compromise runs deeper than we initially believed. Oceanic is just one node in a larger network." "General Bradley?" Sarah suggested, watching for reaction. "I'm not confirming or denying specific suspects, Colonel, but I will say this. Trust no one outside direct defense intelligence channels, not even Williams." "Especially not Williams," Sarah clarified. "I didn't say that," Mitchell replied, though his tone conveyed what his words did not. "Find Santos if she's still alive. Secure any evidence she collected, and watch your six. You've made yourself a target by asking these questions." "One more thing, Colonel. Operation Safeguard wasn't terminated because the concerns were unsubstantiated. It was terminated because it was getting too close to the source of the compromise. Remember that." The connection ended abruptly. Sarah took a moment before readmitting Foster and Williams. "Admiral Mitchell has authorized expanded search parameters," she informed them, revealing nothing of their classified conversation. "Defense intelligence is treating this as potential espionage." Williams' eyes narrowed slightly. "Did the Admiral share any specific intelligence about Santos's investigation?" "Only that it involved classified systems beyond the scope of our current operation," Sarah replied. As the meeting concluded, Williams paused at the door. "Colonel Martinez, a word in private." Once alone with Williams, Sarah maintained a neutral demeanor while inwardly elevating her caution. "Colonel," Williams began, her tone conversational but her eyes sharp, "I couldn't help noticing your question about General Crawford. That's well outside the parameters of our investigation." "Following leads where they take me, Major. Standard investigative procedure." Williams smiled without warmth. "Of course, but investigating a general's movements might be construed as overreach." The warning was clear. "Stay in your lane. My priority is finding Santos and Chen, Major. Any avenue that might lead to their recovery is worth pursuing." "Admirable dedication," Williams replied, her tone suggesting otherwise. "Just remember that chains of command exist for reasons, Colonel." Sarah's secure phone vibrated as she left the building. Thompson was already waiting, his expression tense. Chen's gone. Quarters cleared out, personal effects removed. Professional job. "Not dead," Sarah clarified. "Removed, like Santos." Thompson nodded grimly. "That's my assessment. Too many similarities to be coincidence." "Admiral Mitchell confirmed Santos stumbled onto a controlled monitoring operation," Sarah informed him. "Defense intelligence has been tracking the credential compromise for 4 months." Thompson processed this information, his expression darkening. So they knew. They knew, and they let Santos continue her investigation without warning her of the danger. They didn't know she'd identified specific suspects, Sarah clarified. That's what made her a target. And now Chen's been taken too, Thompson said, his controlled exterior cracking slightly. Just like Jennifer. Different methods, same result. Sarah placed a hand briefly on his arm. We're going to find them, Captain, and we're going to expose whoever is responsible. We need to accelerate this, Thompson continued. They're eliminating witnesses faster than we can protect them. Sarah nodded. I'm high profile enough that my sudden disappearance would trigger immediate high-level response. I need access to the secure communications facility, the one Santos was auditing before she disappeared. Thompson's brow furrowed. That's the most heavily guarded section of the installation. Biometric access, constant surveillance, armed guards. Which is why I need your help to get inside. Sarah met his gaze directly. Do you still have access codes? Yes, but they're likely monitoring all authorized entries. The moment we access those systems, they'll know. That's what I'm counting on, Sarah replied. I want them to know I'm accessing the same systems Santos was investigating. I want them to react. Thompson studied her. You're not just making yourself a target. You're creating a diversion. Sarah nodded. While they focus on me, Defense Intelligence can search for Santos and Chen without interference, and you can secure the final piece of evidence we need. Which is General Crawford's actual location during the dates his credentials were used here at Oceanic. We need to prove he wasn't physically present when the systems were accessed under his authorization. Thompson checked his watch. The secure facility has a maintenance window at 1600 hours, 30-minute period when primary security systems cycle for diagnostic checks. That's our window, Sarah decided. I'll create a diversion at the main security center at 1545, drawing attention away from the secure facility. You'll have from 1600 to 1630 to access the systems and retrieve Crawford's actual location data. Thompson's expression remained troubled. Colonel, if we're caught accessing classified systems without proper authorization, we'll face court-martial. I know, Sarah replied. But if we don't act, Santos and Chen will likely die, just like Jennifer. The mention of his daughter's name resolved Thompson's hesitation. 1600 hours. I'll be ready. At precisely 1545 hours, Sarah entered the main security center, requesting a comprehensive review of all camera systems as part of her assessment, creating a resource-intensive activity that would occupy the security staff during the critical window. At 1603 hours, Harrison appeared at the security center entrance, his expression controlled but his body language betraying tension. Colonel Martinez, he greeted her with forced cordiality. I understand you're conducting a comprehensive security review. Correct, Major. Standard procedure, following unexplained personnel absences. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm surprised you weren't included in the emergency briefing. Commander Foster called all department heads 15 minutes ago. The lie was smooth, designed to lure Sarah away. She met it with equal smoothness. My presence wasn't required. I'm continuing my assessment while Commander Foster coordinates search efforts. Harrison's jaw tightened. Nevertheless, your expertise would be valuable. The briefing is in the main conference room. I'll join when I've completed this review, Sarah replied, turning back to the security monitors. At 16:28 hours, 2 minutes before the end of the maintenance cycle, her secure phone vibrated. Package secured. Thompson had succeeded. Now came the most dangerous phase, extracting themselves and the evidence before their unauthorized access was discovered. Sarah had just reached the administrative wing when the installation alarm system activated, a series of short, sharp tones indicating security breach. Someone had discovered the unauthorized access to the secure communications facility. Sarah maintained her measured pace, neither hurrying nor slowing. She reached her office without incident, closing the door behind her and immediately accessing her secure tablet. A message from Thompson awaited her, a location code, military shorthand for an emergency rendezvous point off the installation. Thompson had gone underground, taking the evidence with him. Sarah had just finished memorizing the code when her office door opened without warning. Major Williams stood in the doorway, flanked by two armed military police officers. "Colonel Martinez," Williams said coldly, "you're wanted for questioning in connection with unauthorized access to classified systems. Please surrender your sidearm and communication devices." The secure conference room in Building Alpha contained not only Foster, but Admiral Mitchell as well, now physically present rather than on video link. "Colonel Martinez," Admiral Mitchell began, "at 16:07 hours today, someone using Captain Thompson's access credentials entered the secure communications facility and extracted classified data regarding General Crawford's movements and schedule. Given your meeting with Thompson earlier today and your conspicuous presence in the security center during this breach, we have reason to believe you are involved." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Admiral, with respect, I was conducting authorized security reviews as part of my assessment. If Captain Thompson accessed classified systems, he did so without my knowledge." Williams made a sound of disbelief. "Colonel, we have security footage of your meeting with Thompson at the maintenance facility, an unauthorized, undocumented meeting. Captain Thompson requested a private briefing regarding his daughter's case," Sarah replied. "Given the personal nature of the discussion, we chose a location away from routine monitoring." "And discussed what exactly?" Mitchell pressed. "His concerns that Jennifer's death was connected to her work on Operation Safeguard," Sarah replied. "The same operation Lieutenant Santos was effectively continuing, though under different authorization." Foster's expression revealed genuine surprise. She hadn't known about this connection. Williams remained impassive, but her posture tensed slightly. Mitchell's reaction was most telling, a flicker of what might have been approval. "Operation Safeguard was terminated 4 years ago," Williams stated flatly. "Officially, yes," Sarah agreed, "but the security concerns it was investigating weren't resolved, merely bureaucratically closed. Santos discovered the same anomalous access patterns Jennifer Thompson had identified 6 years earlier." Foster leaned forward. "Colonel, are you suggesting Santos's disappearance is connected to this security concern?" "Not suggesting, Commander. Stating." Sarah met each of their gazes in turn. "Santos identified unauthorized access to strategic weapons authentication protocols using general-level credentials, specifically General Crawford's. She determined the access occurred when Crawford was physically elsewhere, proving credential compromise. Before she could report her findings, she disappeared. Now, Chen, who Santos had questioned about communication security, has also disappeared." Mitchell's expression remained carefully neutral. "Colonel Martinez, these are serious allegations involving highly classified systems and senior military personnel." "Without substantial evidence?" "The evidence exists, Admiral," Sarah interrupted. "Captain Thompson has secured it off-site. Access logs, timestamps, location verification, all proving General Crawford's credentials were used to access strategic weapons protocols when he was verifiably elsewhere." Williams stepped forward. "If such evidence exists, it should be surrendered immediately to proper authorities. Captain Thompson's actions constitute espionage." "No, Major," Sarah countered. "They constitute counterintelligence. Thompson is protecting evidence of a serious security breach, evidence that has already cost his daughter her life and potentially Santos and Chen as well." Foster raised a hand. "Admiral Mitchell, I believe we need to continue this discussion in a more secure environment. perhaps with fewer participants. Mitchell nodded once sharply. Agreed. Colonel Martinez will remain in custody while we verify her claims. Major Williams, please wait outside. Williams' expression hardened. Admiral, as Pentagon liaison, that's an order, Major, Mitchell interrupted. After Williams departed, Mitchell deactivated the recording equipment. Colonel, he addressed Sarah directly, where is Thompson now? Sarah weighed her options carefully. Admiral, with respect, I'll provide that information only when I'm certain it won't endanger him or the evidence he's protecting. Mitchell's expression showed approval. Good. Trust no one, not even me. He turned to Foster. Commander, secure this room. No one enters or leaves until I give direct authorization. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Defense Intelligence has been aware of the credential compromise for over 8 months, not just 4, as I indicated earlier. We've been running a controlled monitoring operation, tracking the unauthorized access and attempting to identify the source. Which is why you didn't warn Santos when she stumbled onto the same anomalies, Sarah surmised. Correct. Her investigation was parallel to ours, but independent, providing potential confirmation from an unconnected source. When she identified specific access points here at Oceanic, she became a liability to whoever is behind the compromise. And they took action to remove her, Sarah concluded, just as they did with Jennifer Thompson 6 years ago. Mitchell nodded grimly. Thompson was getting too close then, just as Santos was now. The difference is this time, we were watching. We have surveillance on Santos from the moment she left the installation. Sarah processed this revelation. You know where she is? We do. Secure facility outside San Diego, owned by a shell corporation that traces back to defense contractor Meridian Defense Systems. And Chen, taken to the same facility approximately 8 hours ago, both alive based on our most recent intelligence. Relief washed through Sarah, quickly followed by confusion. If you know their location, why haven't you extracted them? Because we don't yet know how extensive this goes, Mitchell explained. The credential compromise involves at least 2 generals and potentially members of the Joint Chiefs. We need to identify everyone involved and their full capabilities before moving, or we risk alerting conspirators we haven't yet identified. So, Santos and Chen are essentially bait, Sarah observed, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Regrettably, yes, though we're monitoring closely to ensure their safety. Foster spoke up. Admiral, with respect, using personnel as unwitting bait crosses ethical and legal boundaries. I'm well aware, Commander, Mitchell replied grimly, but the alternative is potentially worse. If this compromise is what we believe, a backdoor into our strategic weapons authentication protocols, the national security implications are severe. Where does Williams fit into this? Sarah asked. Her behavior suggests involvement. Williams reports directly to General Bradley. Her presence here was Bradley's idea, ostensibly to oversee the harassment investigation, but more likely to monitor any potential discovery of the credential compromise. You suspect Bradley? Sarah stated. I suspect everyone with access to those systems, Mitchell corrected, Bradley included. His connection to Safeguard's termination raises questions, certainly. What happens now, Admiral? Foster asked. Colonel Martinez is officially in custody. Thompson is in the wind with evidence, and we have 2 missing personnel being held at a contractor facility. Now, Mitchell replied, we force their hand. Colonel Martinez's very public detention will create pressure. They'll believe we're focused on her and Thompson, giving us opportunity to move on the San Diego facility. Using me as a distraction, Sarah concluded. Precisely. Your detention will be well publicized, but largely theatrical. Meanwhile, Thompson needs to remain hidden with the evidence until we're ready to move." Mitchell turned to Foster. "Commander, arrange for Colonel Martinez to be held in your private office rather than the detention facility. Minimum security presence, but make it look official for anyone watching. I'll deal with Williams." The next 12 hours unfolded with careful choreography, a public show of investigation while behind the scenes, a very different operation took shape. Through a predetermined signal placed in the installation newspaper's classified section, a Cold War-era technique taught in special operations training, Sarah conveyed essential information to Thompson. At 700 the following morning, Sarah was brought to the secure conference room for official questioning. The session was carefully staged, recorded for official purposes, but designed primarily to create electronic and paper trails. "Colonel Martinez," Williams began, "explain your unauthorized meeting with Captain Thompson prior to his breach of secure systems." Sarah maintained her cover story. "As I've stated, Captain Thompson requested a private discussion regarding his daughter's case. And you expect us to believe you had no knowledge of his plan to access classified systems. Captain Thompson is a decorated officer with decades of exemplary service," Sarah replied evenly. "If he accessed systems without proper authorization, he undoubtedly had compelling reasons." When the session concluded, Foster entered, dismissing the MP with a brief order. "Defense intelligence has established surveillance on the San Diego facility," Foster reported quietly. "Thermal imaging confirms 2 subjects held in separate sections of the building." "Security?" Sarah asked. "Substantial. Private military contractors, former Special Forces personnel, Meridian Defense Systems employees, 24-hour security rotation, 3-man teams with overlapping coverage." "Not insurmountable," Sarah noted, "but challenging without specialized personnel, which is why Mitchell has activated a SEAL team from Coronado," Foster revealed, "on standby for extraction operation pending final authorization. Timeline? Tonight, 0200 hours. Peak circadian low point for guards, minimum civilian presence in surrounding areas." "And Thompson?" "Signal received and acknowledged. He'll deliver the evidence directly to Admiral Mitchell at a secure off-site location, coinciding with the extraction operation. What's my role? You're to remain in visible detention until 2100 hours. Then you'll be transferred to the detention facility under increased security, or so the official documentation will state. Creating the impression I've become a higher priority target," Sarah surmised. "Exactly. The actual transfer vehicle will divert to rendezvous with the SEAL team. Mitchell wants you on site for the extraction. Your familiarity with Santos and Chen could be crucial." "Nay." At precisely 2100 hours, 2 MPs arrived to escort her to the transfer vehicle, a standard prisoner transport van with military security markings. Only when they were 10 miles from the installation did the van divert, turning onto a secluded access road where a black SUV waited. Inside the SUV, Sarah found Admiral Mitchell and a SEAL team leader she recognized immediately, Lieutenant Commander David Reed, with whom she'd served during operations in Africa. "Colonel Martinez," Reed greeted her as the handcuffs were removed. "Good to see you again, though I'd have preferred different circumstances." Sarah studied the satellite imagery and facility schematics spread on the vehicle's table. The building, officially a data storage center, was a 2-story concrete structure with minimal windows and multiple security features. "Rules of engagement?" Sarah directed this question to Mitchell. "Non-lethal if possible," the Admiral replied. "These may be misguided contractors rather than willing conspirators, but extraction of Santos and Chen is priority 1. If their safety requires lethal force, you're authorized." At precisely 0200 hours, the operation commenced. Two snipers with non-lethal rounds neutralized the exterior guards simultaneously. The entry teams moved forward under cover of darkness, using thermal imaging to identify additional security personnel. Following the pre-planned route, Sarah's team moved toward Chen's likely location in the building's east wing. Reed's team split off toward the west wing, where Santos was believed to be held. The first sign something was wrong came when Sarah's team reached their target room. The door stood partially open, and thermal imaging showed no heat signatures inside. The room was empty, a chair with restraints, monitoring equipment, but no occupant. Alpha 2, this is Alpha 1. Reed's voice came through the secure communications. Target location empty, signs of recent evacuation. Status of your objective? Alpha 1, same situation here, Sarah replied. Room set up for detention, but empty. Recent evacuation confirmed. In a monitoring station, they found what they were looking for. A computer displaying surveillance footage of an underground garage where two figures were being loaded into separate vehicles. Alpha 1, we have visual confirmation, Sarah reported. Targets being moved via underground garage, northeast corner of the facility. Two separate vehicles, black SUVs, no visible plates. Together they advanced into the underground structure. At the far end, they spotted their targets, Santos being placed in one SUV, Chen in another. 4 armed guards supervised the transfer. Multiple hostiles armed, Reed assessed quietly. Civilians present. Clean shots limited. The teams moved into position. At Reed's signal, they initiated the extraction. Federal agents, Reed announced. Lower your weapons and stand down. The response was immediate, guards pivoting to engage. The SEAL team responded with precise fire, neutralizing 2 guards while the others sought cover behind vehicles. Sarah moved toward Chen's SUV, staying low as rounds impacted nearby surfaces. She glimpsed Chen through the window, conscious but restrained, eyes wide with recognition. The driver attempted to start the engine, but a precise shot disabled the vehicle's front tire. Sarah reached the passenger door, finding Chen inside, hands zip-tied, secured to the door handle. Colonel Martinez, Chen gasped, relief evident despite her fear. We're getting you out, Sarah assured her, cutting the zip ties. Stay low and move with me. Alpha 1, I have package 2 secured, Sarah reported, moving to extraction point Alpha. Acknowledged, Reed replied, gunfire punctuating his transmission. Package 1 secured but injured, medical required, cover our withdrawal. Sarah positioned Chen behind a concrete pillar. Stay here. Don't move until I return for you. With Chen temporarily secured, Sarah moved to support Reed's team. Santos appeared to be unconscious, carried between 2 SEAL operators, while Reed provided covering fire. Route clear to extraction point Alpha, she reported. Chen secured there. Reed nodded. Medical status of package 1 critical. Possible sedative overdose. Need immediate evacuation. The underground garage had only 1 vehicle exit, currently blocked by their teams. But the facility blueprints had shown a service elevator large enough for personnel. Alternate extraction route, Sarah decided. Service elevator to roof. Medical evacuation can retrieve there. As they reached the elevator, Chen spoke urgently. Colonel, they knew you were coming. They've been monitoring communications from the installation. Harrison has access to everything. Security, communications, personnel movements. Did they tell you what they wanted? Sarah asked. Chen nodded, her expression grim. They kept asking about the strategic weapons authentication protocols, what Santos had discovered, who she'd told. And Santos. What did they do to her? Chemical interrogation, Reed interjected, checking Santos's vital signs. Likely scopolamine or similar truth serum, followed by sedatives when they finished questioning her. The elevator reached the roof level. Within minutes, 2 Black Hawks appeared, one descending to the rooftop while the other maintained overwatch. As they loaded Santos into the helicopter, Sarah's secure phone vibrated with a message from Admiral Mitchell. Thompson intercepted en route to rendezvous, evidence secured. Bradley has gone dark. Assume compromise extends to highest levels. Trust no one outside immediate team. The implications were clear and troubling. Their operation had been partially compromised. Thompson was in danger, and the conspiracy reached even higher than they'd suspected. Sarah made a split-second decision, showing the message to Reed before deleting it. The SEAL commander nodded grimly, understanding without explanation. Change of plans, Reed informed his team. Primary extraction site compromised. Divert to secondary location. Full communications blackout except for medical updates on Package 1. As they boarded the helicopter, Chen leaned against Sarah's shoulder, exhaustion finally overcoming her. They said more would die, she murmured, barely audible over the helicopter noise. Said it wasn't just about codes or protocols. Said it was about preventing nuclear Armageddon. Sarah filed this information away, another piece of the increasingly complex puzzle. The conspiracy wasn't just about compromising security systems. It had an ideological component, driving the participants beyond mere power or financial gain. As the helicopter raced through the night, Sarah's mind was already planning next steps. Thompson needed to be located and extracted. The evidence he carried had to be secured, and they needed to identify everyone involved in the conspiracy before the entire operation unraveled. The stakes had risen dramatically. What had begun as an investigation into harassment and intimidation had evolved into a counterintelligence operation with national security implications. Now, with Bradley gone dark and Thompson intercepted, they were operating without clear command structure or support. Sarah checked her watch. 03:17 hours. In 7 hours, the night would give way to day, and every moment Thompson remained unaccounted for increased the risk to both him and the evidence he carried. The investigation that started at Oceanic Defense Installation had become something far more significant, a race against time to preserve the fundamental principles that governed the nation's most powerful weapons systems, ensuring they remained under proper civilian control rather than the shadow oversight of self-appointed guardians. For Jennifer Thompson, for Maria Santos and Lisa Chen, and for the constitutional principles that defined the nation they had all sworn to protect, Sarah Martinez would see this mission through to its conclusion, whatever the cost.